Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Tiers from Tutor Collegiate Strategies, and you're about to check out the latest episode of the Mission Admissions Podcast, a show that's designed to help higher ed become better recruiters, communicators, marketers, and managers. Each week, I'll introduce you to an industry leader or difference maker who will share helpful advice, tips, and strategies that will help you grow professionally and personally. Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify podcast network and is made possible by Gecko, an engagement platform that makes it easy for your team to deliver a better student experience. I'm excited to share my latest candid conversation, so let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 3 of the Mission Admissions podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to someone that I started following about a year ago on Twitter. She's a businesswoman who has been named one of the top influencers in content marketing, and I love how much Adrienne engages with her community online. So without further ado, Adrienne Barnes is the founder of Best Buyer Personas and a well-known B2B SaaS content marketing consultant. When she's not helping companies identify and understand their target audiences, Adrienne uses her customer research skills to create unique content marketing strategies. She's worked with some amazing companies such as Catchpoint, Monday.com, Audience, Stripe, and Smartling. And fun fact about Adrienne, she is in the process of packing up her house and moving her family to a farmhouse. So welcome to the show, Adrienne.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So content marketing is your wheelhouse, in my opinion. And so I'm just going to, right out of the gate, how would you describe the state of content marketing right now, Adrienne?
Oh, the state of content, crucial. That was the first term that came to my mind when I think of like this state of content marketing. There's a trend going right now on TikTok that's everything is content, everything is content, everything is content. And so people are recording what they're doing and creating content that way. It really is an era of needing to reach your community, reach your people in as creative and in as a human way as possible. And, content is pretty vague, right? Like that can be videos, podcasts, blog posts, ebooks, tweets, and, Instagram. That's all kinds of things. So when you say like, oh, I'm a content marketer, we're doing content, you could be meaning a whole lot of stuff. But definitely that if you're not doing anything, then you're missing out. So definitely this is the state of content is crucial. You have to be creating something in order to have a presence anywhere, no matter what it is you're trying to market.
And you said the word human, which I love, right? I talk when I train admission staff and talk with content marketers and marketing people in higher education, I talk about humanizing different communications, whether it's verbal, nonverbal. You could say authenticity. That's been a buzzword, I feel like, for at least the last couple of years. But why do you think it's so hard for a lot of people just to humanize things and make it authentic for their target audience?
Yes. So I am really guilty of this. Actually, I can tell a little story. I was trying to do LinkedIn, right? Like I wanted to create LinkedIn content, especially for Best Buyer Persona. That's where the buyers are usually for my B2B type B2B SaaS field. And I was doing it in a way that sounded like every other person on LinkedIn, right? Like there's kind of this cadence, this tone, and it just didn't feel like me. And I hated the platform. I wasn't enjoying it. There was nothing enjoyable for it for me. The interactions all seemed stale and lame. And, finally I kind of came to the conclusion that it's because I was not using my own voice. I wasn't just coming to the platform and saying things the way I would like to say them. So when I decided to really create the content in a way that sounded more like me, still specified for the platform itself, but more approachable for me, more in my tone of voice, it really just sounded much more human, and it got more engagement, right? Like people started interacting with it more. I was not just trying to sound robotic or, under the guise of like best practices. I think best practices in content marketing, are great for people who are trying to learn the rules. But the moment you've kind of conceptualized the rules, it's time to almost break them completely and just get back to like being yourself, using your own tone of voice. I actually tweeted the other day about humanizing cold calls, right? Like there's nothing more humanizing and will improve any content you send out, whether it's an email or a blog post, than number one, the fear of it like going viral for like just shaming you against it being like an awful email or an awful cold outreach. But also just one of the things that I've seen that has really improved and made my content more human is if I envision the one person that I'm writing to, right? Like, so I'll even start an email with like, dear friend's name, and then write my email as if I'm really writing it to my one friend. And then the rest of it just goes much more smoothly. I'm not trying to impress. I'm not trying to sound jargony or, like super corporate or anything like that. I'm just relaying information in whatever context I'm in currently.
And a couple of things you said there, to me, it's all about understanding your target audience, right? Because you can talk in your voice, I can talk in my voice, and what you want to hear from me, Adrienne, may not be the same thing that I think that you want to hear from me. And I know in higher ed, that's something I see a lot of admissions and enrollment marketing professionals struggle with, is they don't understand just how important, I would call it the psychology, if you want to think of it that way, of knowing your target audience. So talk to me and talk to the audience about why is it so important? I mean, you can call it creating personas, which we'll get to, and I know that's something you're big into, but why is getting that data from your target audience and understanding, all right, what they want so important?
Yeah. At the very basic foundational level, it's writing, right? Like when you were in English class in, high school or early college, your English professor teacher told you, know your audience. Learn who you're writing to. You're not going to write your Senate paper type tone to your best friend, and you wouldn't do vice versa. At least that was some of the lessons I taught my students when I was in my former life an English teacher, an avid teacher. So what you want to make sure is that whoever's receiving the information at the end, that it's written or it's perceived in a way that's going to be applicable to them. If you're not making everything understandable to the person who's receiving the information, then it's not going to land. It's not going to set with them. So you have to know who they are. Where is this going? Who is reading it? Who do I want this to reach out to, or who's actually on the receiving end? What are some of their considerations? What is their daily life like? What kind of pain points or struggles are they facing in order to make decisions accurately? Knowing those things really does help you answer those questions and serve those people better. You're going to actually not waste time. You're not going to be fruitless and send all kinds of contacts and information without it being really detailed and accurate and suited to the people you're trying to communicate with.
Why is that so hard then for so many people? Because you know this, I know this, and I know if you're listening right now, you know it too. There's a really strong chance. So help us understand, what is it? Is it fear of, I don't know where to start in terms of capturing data, fear of, but we've always done it this way? I mean, in your experience working with companies, what is it that holds somebody back from saying, okay, everything Adrienne just said makes complete sense, but yet I don't really know if I can do that if that's not the way I'm doing it?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that get in people's way. Fear is number one. Where do I start? How do I even, what am I supposed to do? Just go talk to people? Where do I get these people? How do I learn more about who they are? And if you're not familiar with the particular types of tools, like we do a lot of social listening and ethnography and digital intelligence, that can be a little overwhelming. And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin with that. Also, just a lot of what we do is run interviews. So we'll talk to people and really get an understanding of what's going on and what are some of their struggles and their buying triggers. And that creates a little bit of concern about how do I do these interviews? How do I get a hold of the people to even talk to? So there are quite a few hesitances and things that get in people's way in order to understand who their audience is. But I always try to say, like, it doesn't have to be a big ordeal, right? Like, you don't have to say, okay, we're going to pause all the work and we're going to do this huge research project and understand our core buying audience. Like, you can do little bitty incremental things once a week to have a better understanding of who you're talking to and all of the different kinds of issues and really like get a good 360 idea of who they are. I say, in order to know, we always say, like, know your customers, right? Like, you have to know your customers, know your audience. And in order to really know them, you have to know how they behave, why they behave the way they do, and like how they self-identify, what are their roles and things like that. So it can take a while, but it's just take a little bit at a time. Have one conversation a week. Try to just, open up the door, and you'll be able to have some much clearer insights sooner than later. So it doesn't have to be a huge thing, an undertaking, essentially.
Yeah, and I love that you said just even one conversation a week, right? I talk all the time, in the higher ed space. The number one, any of you listening, people that you need to talk to more, whether you're on the admission side, the enrollment marketing side, are your current students. They are living every single thing, right, that you're trying to communicate to prospective students, regardless of the populations that you're trying to bring into your institution. And so, how can you ultimately start, Adrienne? I mean, give somebody listening, even if it's just a few basic tips outside of saying, all right, I'm just going to start cold emailing everybody and hoping that, where are some things that they can do, or where are some places they can go that aren't going to cost them a ton of either time or money, that at least will get them started to understanding their target audience better?
One of the ways that obviously is a great way to capture these conversations is to have them while they're in the admissions office. But the caveat with that one is that one's only going to benefit you, the person having the conversation. It's not going to be able to be used across the department. You're not going to be able to turn around and tell your entire team, hey, look, these are the findings we discovered. This is kind of how we need to approach some of our key points, or how we can help these people, the common questions we're finding. So one of the ways is, if they're coming online, you can actually capture survey data at different points of their process. So maybe they come up and you recognize that, or the software does the stuff that this is their first visit. You can ping up a 3-question survey. What has you visiting today? What is your biggest question? The things that's really going to identify, like, what are these people's core concerns, and what are their questions right now? Because really you want to be able to answer their biggest questions as quickly and easily as possible. Because I would imagine we want the admissions process to go smoothly and to capture those students when they're interested and when the need is there.
When you're talking to a 16 or a 17 or an 18-year-old, you and I both know,
yeah.
Now it's a whole different level of how do I even just get them to pay attention?
Oh my gosh, yes.
That becomes, and people listening to this, that is the core audience for a lot of colleges and universities. And so I'm with you there. I just wonder how much of it is, to your point, you just have to ask better questions. Like I tell people all the time, the worst question you can ever ask somebody, right? Adrienne, do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, that's never going to.
Of course I have questions, but guess what? If I know nothing about your school,
yes.
If I'm scared to talk to you because I just met you 30 seconds ago, where do you want me to start? This is exactly what students tell us in surveys when we ask them why this is such a challenge on their end. And so how much do you think is, hey, if you want to understand your customer more, or whoever your audience is, you just have to ask better questions? I don't think I've met a single higher ed professional that loved everything about their technology stack. Here's the honest truth. No CRM or SIS will be able to meet all of the needs of all of your team. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Gecko, a student engagement platform that offers customizable modules designed to complement your institution's CRM and SIS. Gecko offers plug-and-play modules that enable your team to deliver memorable student experiences at scale. Their chatbot and texting tools will empower your admissions team to engage with the highest quality prospects by serving as a front line of defense for prospects that have basic questions about the college admissions process. Gecko's event module makes it easy to create awesome online and in-person event experiences one time and then duplicate them throughout the year with just a couple of clicks. Their call center is also an industry leader. No more splitting call lists into a dozen Excel files, scrolling through data to find who you need to call next, or having to manually record who picked up and who didn't. Oh, and did I mention that everything integrates seamlessly into your CRM and SIS? Because it does. So if you're a Slate school, for example, you'll see all of that sweet interaction data in your student's timeline. If you want to level up how you engage with prospective students, but you don't want to disrupt your processes, rip out all your tech, or start a new CRM procurement process, you need to check Gecko out. You can learn more about their offerings at geckoengage.com/Enrollify. And be sure to tell them that Jeremy and the Enrollify team sent you their way.
1,000,000,000%. That's a lot of what any kind of research process is, and part of what I'm teaching right now is that you really do, the quality of your insights is only as good as the questions that you ask and when you ask them and who you ask them to. So yeah, what are you doing here today, or how can we help you? Those kind of vague questions, especially to a 16-year-old. I felt like I said a whole lot when I was that age. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't even know what questions to ask, because you just have no basis and foundation for any understanding. So you're walking in blind. And so really giving them some information to go off of, being very, very specific in your ask. Like, how can we help you with or find FAFSA information? Or how can we help you get funding? How can we help you fill out your application? Whatever the little bitty thing, like break it very down to a granular thing. Don't offer these really broad kinds of questions. And then also you've got to show up where they are. So maybe it's not students who are coming to the website. Maybe it's the parents who are doing the website. Maybe students are actually on Instagram looking at your hashtags and looking at the search queries and using Explore. What are other students saying about the school and the university? And I'm sure I know that there are university influencers and things of that nature. But even utilizing those people, those current students, and going to those pages and saying, hey, what kind of questions are they getting a lot about, the application process or school life culture or, all of the different things. Make sure that when you go and do your research that you're going to the sources of where your audience are going to ask questions. You take all that information and come back, and now you know some common questions. Now like common approaches, because what they're saying to their 18-year-old friend who's a freshman in college, as they're a junior or senior in high school, that's a true genuine concern, right? They have those two genuine conversations, but it's not necessarily how they're going to come to you, in the admissions. But you can say, hey, this is a really common concern. We see this a lot. Is this something that you have a question about? Feed them the questions from your side, but gather those questions from the social side is what I would say.
Let me go into this idea of, okay, now you're capturing data. Mm-hmm. Now you're creating what I know you're very fond of, right? Which is this idea of different personas. Mm-hmm. I've seen you say most personas suck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do most personas suck that different people in marketing agencies, right, or content people come up with?
Yeah, most personas suck because the process sucks. Most people, when they create a persona, they sit in their marketing consulting room, their conference room, and they say, okay, guys, who is our ideal customer? Who are we talking to? Okay, blah, blah, blah. And they come up with some things, and then they get creative, and they say, like, well, their favorite color is blue, obviously, because our brand is blue, so we're their favorite color. If they were a superhero, they'd be, Iron Man, because they want, they make up silly things, and then they give them a silly name. And then, in my opinion, they also give them a name, a face, a gender, and an age. And in a lot of just my own anecdotal findings and some research that I've done with cognitive bias type folks, that lays a foundation for bias that just isn't necessary, isn't required. So rather than giving your persona, what we call in the marketing world is like marketer, Mary the marketer, and she's 32 and has 2 dogs and all of these things, actually get to the core of like segment them and get to the core of like what are their true buying triggers, what are the reasons they buy, what are they trying to accomplish with what you're selling? What are their motivations and those aspirations? All of those kinds of details can create the best buyer persona profile. So we don't do pick people's names and pictures and all of that. It really is a segmented audience in a way that's focused on what are they trying to achieve? How can we best serve them?
Yeah. And so let's just play this situation out then. Now you've gathered data, you've started to segment your audience, and I think higher ed has become a lot better at this in the last couple of years. There's a ways to go still, but I think this notion of, well, why are different groups of students going to college? What are they trying to get out of
Right.
a typical four-year college experience? You use the word segmentation. I hit on it a ton, and I feel like another word that I always tie in with it is personalization. So now that you've got these different groups of, we can call them personas, we can call them whatever you want to call it, target audiences. How do you, and this is where I'm just go as deep as you want because I think you can offer a ton of value here, Adrienne. How do you take that data and make it actionable, but make it actionable in a way that, again, doesn't benefit you as much as it does benefit your audience?
Yeah, so you have to start with that, right? If your end result is with the mindset of I'm going to serve these people in the way that's best for them, you have to start with that intention. You have to start with like, okay, what do we need to know? How can we help these people the best? How can we help these people the best? How can we find and serve them well? So when you start gathering your information, really looking at the answering the problems of like, what kind of fears do they have? What kind of concerns do they have? What are their struggling moments? What are their aspirations? We do a lot of this in B2B marketing, but I can see how it would play really well in the higher ed space. Like, who are they hoping to become? What are they hoping to achieve with this degree? Everybody has different goals in higher ed. Sometimes it's, well, I just want this job, or sometimes it's the prestige, right? Sometimes it's the parents' approval. Getting to the core of what in my space we call the job to be done. What is the job that the segment or the audience is trying to achieve with the product? So in B2B SaaS, you buy a software and we're trying to understand, why did they buy this software? What were some of the core moments of the buying triggers that led them there? And I think it can be applied to higher ed as well. Like, what is the core reason people are searching for your school? And maybe even thinking of it as like a 4-year degree is too broad, too much. Maybe they get segmented down into smaller problems, smaller issues. Either way, the way to create it and have them actionable at the end is to make sure that throughout the process, you are finding like accurate data. You're not just kind of throwing your hands up and asking really broad general questions or not getting clear stuff. Like we said, really ask specific questions, find very specific problems, and then figure out the groupings, the little communities, the segments of your audiences, and find those dots that are connected there. Then, in order to really make it actionable, you have to put it into action. So you learn stuff. You learn that, okay, this is a common concern. This is a common question that they have. Let's write some blog posts. Let's create some brochures. Let's answer these questions in our content. So you can have all of these personas with all the data, but if you're not putting it into place, putting it into action, it doesn't do any good, right? You really need to be able to serve those people well. So maybe that's an email nurturing sequence, after you see this trigger done or something like that, making sure that you are then serving them well, that you're putting that information into place and into action. And then you test, right? Like, that's what a marketer's job is. You put this stuff out there, you see how it performs, you test how it performs, and you iterate on it next time.
I want to shift gears here. You've got a strong writing background. How does someone become a better writer?
Oh gosh, become a better reader, read more. Really, it's one of the most fascinating things. As a former English teacher and writer, professional writer, we say it's the only thing you can passively learn. Like, you can become a better writer by reading more, and then of course writing more. But you will never become a better runner by watching people run races. You'll never become a better, electrician by watching people put together wires. It's the only passive skill you can learn by doing something completely different. So if you want to be a better writer, read more, and then just write every day. And don't write with any agenda. Just write.
Cold emails, Adrienne. This is something I feel like, we talked about phone calls earlier, which is a huge pain point as well. What's the best strategy to get somebody's attention if you're reaching out via what we would call a cold email?
Gosh, cold emails are such a challenge. And honestly, they are a beast that I'm trying to personally still overcome in my business. Mostly, I would say, is just be as genuine and as helpful as possible. A lot of time, cold emails, cold approach, cold pitches, LinkedIn DMs are about me, the person coming to you with a pitch. I'm going to share my idea with you. But that's not ever going to work. The best way is to say, hey, do you have this problem? Is this something you're struggling with? And then start up a conversation. They're not going to sign a deal on a cold email. They're not going to sign the admissions process through a cold email. But that cold approach can start a conversation, which can then maybe lead to something further. But if you get a response, then I think that's a successful cold email or cold response.
And that's a data point that I would argue needs to be probably not just in higher ed. Tell me if you agree, Adrienne, but needs to be more important and more of an attention point for so many marketers, which is engagement is such an important metric, right? It's one thing if they open an email. Sure, that's helpful to know that. It's a whole nother thing, to your point, to say, all right, I'm not going to make it transactional every time. I'm going to engage if I'm writing an email to Adrienne and say, Adrienne, how are you feeling about what I just shared? Or Adrienne, is this something that's important to you? Something back to that direct and intentional question that gets you to respond just to get a conversation going with me. And then that, if I know how to navigate once I get your feedback, leads to another conversation, and then eventually, to your point, we can talk about whatever the next step in the, if you're listening, right, admissions process, making the decision depending on what stage a student is at. And so it really does come down to understanding you don't have to tell them everything all at once, right?
Right.
But you do have to say enough, to your point, to get a conversation going. Subject lines, how important do you think they are? Because to me, right outside of your name, if that's what they see, it's the first thing they see. Do you have any thoughts on subject lines and just any data you've seen or just anything you feel like could add value?
Yeah, I think the best subject lines are the ones that are just transparent and honest. Everyone is privy to the hacks now, right? Like the did it like you're trying to act like you respond, or you tried to act like you forward it to somebody else. Like in B2B, those kind of gross tactics are kind of rampant. And especially with the younger generation, that is not going to fly. So just tell them what it is. Like give them this subject line. I don't even think you have to be cutesy or coy or anything like that. Get their attention, but give it by being genuine and helpful and just telling them this is what's going to be in the email. Because number one, as a student, I'm getting a lot of emails and I need to be able to go back and search my email to figure out what information and what answers were in there. So if you're not giving them like really good, clear, transparent, topical type headlines, you could be missing, search potential in their inbox when they go back and are like, hey, I have this question about this. I think this person answered it. What was that again? And they put in a few key terms in their search inbox. If you were cute, you could miss out on that kind of potential to reach them in their history, essentially.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tears, Jaime Hunt, Corynn Myers, Jaime Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org.
How important then when you create the content, right? Once they've opened, hopefully, your message, how important are, I would say, voice and tone differences when you're talking to these different segments or personas, right, that we discussed earlier? How important is it to understand that component as well? Or do you feel like, no, if you're helpful and you talk where it feels like this is a genuine, honest, authentic conversation, it doesn't matter whether you're talking to a 17-year-old, a 47-year-old, a person who has a different background. Talk to me about just that and adjusting when it comes to the voice and the tone that you use in content.
I don't know if voice and tone need to change so much. You want to stay consistent per brand, right? Like your brand needs to have a consistent voice and tone. But I wouldn't say that should change whether you're the parent or the counselor or the student, because you always want to be speaking clearly. You want to have like accurate communication, just genuine personal type of communication. But the information you're sharing should definitely be personalized depending upon which segment and which target audience you're talking to. So while how you say it should stay consistent to the brand, what you say needs to be personalized depending upon the segment.
Yeah. And you said something there I want to, just give me some quick thoughts, because I feel like this is a misconception in higher ed a lot. Is it wrong to think that higher ed has a brand, right? Every college has this brand, but sometimes the way that a content marketer looks at brand is in the same way that your target audience looks at brand, and that needs to be taken into account too in all of this content creation and these conversations we're trying to ultimately get to.
100%. I mean, a university is a business. At the end of the day, you're taking money. We're talking about selling things. We're marketing things. It's a business. You have a brand voice. You have, or you should. There should be consistency. Now, while there will be, variances with professors and things like that who represent the brand itself, the university itself, should have a pretty consistent voice. I mean, you have consistent colors. There's already branding everywhere. It looks really clear to me that branding is a pretty serious consideration and something that should be taken into account when you're doing marketing for a university.
It's just something I feel like is a constant challenge. And to me, right, and tell me what you think of this statement. This is a statement I feel like I've been making for years. It's not this idea of you're going to be less professional if you talk in a more relaxed tone of voice. To me, you're more relatable and believable, which is what your audience needs from you, especially if you're talking to young people. Agree, disagree?
I 100% agree. Let the academics, let the professors have their $1 million words. Admissions, staff, like when you're actually when the job is to serve the people well, and even professors nowadays aren't trying to be like, pompous and all of that stuff. You're seeing more relatable human interactions. The putting on the airs, that's just going to kind of push people away. If you can, do the 5th grade reading level, really keep it simple, keep it clear, because this process is overwhelming. It is all consuming. And it's not just overwhelming for the student, it's overwhelming for an entire family, if you really think about it. Parents, grandparents, guardians, everybody can be involved in this process. And if you're a first time, I know when I went to college, I was the first college attendee from my family. So my parents had no clue how this process worked. And so it is overwhelming. So be simple, be clear, be concise. And it's not going to look bad on the university like, oh, this university is so simple, I'm not going to get a good education. You're going to be helpful, you're going to serve these people well, and actually it's going to serve your purpose better because you're going to understand, I get how to enroll here. This makes sense. Okay, here we go. Let's just do that. It's going to be happening. It'll happen seamlessly rather than like confused and overwhelmed and frustrated. You don't want people feeling that when they're going through the process.
Adrienne, what's the hardest part of being a female entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, hitting with a hard question today. A female entrepreneur. For me currently, probably it's just the being the female, the struggling, all the mom, that kind of life with the entrepreneur life. And I think that's probably pretty consistent. If you're a mom and running a business, there are definitely challenges in play.
So talk to us if you're willing to share. What are some of the challenges of being a working mom, and what have you found, right? Anybody, because I know there are tons of people listening to this who are working moms as well. What kind of advice can you give them if they feel like, you know what, I'm not balancing all of this the way that I want? How can I become better at it?
Yeah. So I like to look at balance not as in the day-to-day, because there are seasons for times where, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cereal is exactly what's necessary, so you can focus on the business. And there are seasons where, automations and your EA is maybe running things so you can focus on the family. The balance comes in more of an overall aspect. If you can kind of zoom out and look at the life, more of like on a yearly aspect, or this month, how did things go? Day to day, I think if I looked at my day, I would rarely have balance throughout the day. It's more about being able to meet the needs where the needs are, and feel okay with that. The feeling okay with that is the part that's challenging. Often there's some guilt associated somewhere.
Why? Why do you feel guilty as a mom when it comes to that?
Because you just can't be 100% everywhere all of the time. So not only am I'm a mom and an entrepreneur, but we homeschool as well. So mine are always at home, and I'm charging their education and all of those things. So you just can't always be 100% in every aspect. The balance is where you say, okay, we've accomplished a little bit of this, we've accomplished a little bit of that. That's where at least I try to find balance. And I like to make sure that each thing has its time and its place. I don't really want things to overspill, in the ideal world. We do schooling at this time. I work from this time. We do family time at this time. But that is definitely a challenge, because sometimes things come up and your business will demand more than your kids will. And then other times your kids will demand more than your business will. So looking at your balance as an overall rather than like minute and granular will probably be, as I find it, helpful. Just try to find your own sanity, however that's achieved.
I love it. Well, at the end, I've been asking a signature question, Adrienne, of every single guest. And so I would love for you to tell me one important piece of advice that somebody has given you at any point in your life that has really stuck.
Okay, so one piece of important advice is that you're never done. Like, there was a time when I was a teacher and I stopped teaching at 28, and I thought, well, that must be it, because, I worked so hard and for so long to be an educator. It was all I ever wanted to do with my life, was to be a high school English teacher. Had babies, things were going on in the Texas education system, and it was like, okay, this is time for me to bow out. And I just thought, maybe I'll go back to the classroom. I can only be the one thing, right? Like, I've worked so hard to be this one thing. This is what I'm supposed to be. But there are many chapters to life. That's basically the one advice is, you are not done. You are never too old. Somebody asked this yesterday, like, oh, what about shifting gears, careers in your late 20s or early 30s? And I'm like, yeah, 100% do it. It's never too late. You have lots of chapters. Here I am. I'll turn 40 this November, and I'm about to start farming. I'm going to be a whole farmer, and I've never farmed before. I've never even really grown a tomato, which is funny. But you're just never too old, and keep finding your new chapter. Keep writing it.
I love it. Perspective, it's super important. Last thing we're going to do is what I call fun rapid fire. So I'm just going to give you 4 or 5 things, and I just want you to quickly respond to each. You ready?
Yes.
What's the most underrated food?
Tacos.
What's your favorite kind of coffee?
The kind that comes hot in the morning.
What's the best reality TV show that you've been watching?
Oh, this is my shame. This is my guilt. It's the Real Housewives of Anywhere. It's what I stay up late watching.
Hey, listen, my wife watches all of those, and full disclosure, I can't watch any of them with her because to me they're just completely ridiculous, but that's a whole nother conversation.
They are. I know it. I shut it off every night. I'm like, these people are crazy, but it's so fun.
Better jam on PB&J's, strawberry or grape?
No, apricot.
Wow. Okay. And best book you've recently read?
I'm reading right now Thinking in Bets by Anne Dunley, maybe. I can't remember her last name. But yes, Thinking in Bets right now. Really good.
Awesome. Adrienne, I appreciate you spending some time with us today. If somebody listening wants to find you on social, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, I'm at Adrienne Nicole on Twitter, Nakohl, and then LinkedIn as well, Adrienne Nicole, or Adrienne Barnes, and bestbuyerpersona.com. That's where you can find
Awesome.
me.
Adrienne,
Thank
thanks
you,
for
Jeremy.
spending some time with us today.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mission Admissions with Jaime Tiers. If you like this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing, learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.